The mission and impact of the U.S. Department of Education. In the 1970s, the United States faced growing educational challenges. Though internationally, U.S. education was highly respected, especially at the college level. Comparisons to other nations were anecdotal rather than data-driven, as there were no formalized global rankings at the time. At the same time, other countries were investing more heavily in education, and international comparisons became more formalized. With the Program for International Student Assessment, PISA, now providing standardized global rankings, the U.S. could be seen falling behind. Disparities in school funding, declining test scores, and unequal access to quality education were hot-button issues. Growing disparities in educational quality due to socioeconomic and racial inequalities was apparent. Before the creation of the Department of Education, education at the federal level was scattered across multiple agencies. The most prominent was the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, or HEW. Education programs were a part of HEW, but they lacked the focused attention they needed. Education policy was often divided and poorly coordinated, with different federal agencies overseeing various aspects of education, which resulted in inefficiencies in funding, policy execution, and support for schools across the country. President Carter recognized the growing challenges facing the U.S. education system. As a former governor of Georgia, he saw firsthand how disparities in education were affecting students, particularly those in underserved communities. Carter believed that to truly address these issues, whether they were gaps in educational quality, unequal access to resources, or civil rights violations, there needed to be a federal agency solely dedicated to education. His vision was clear: centralize education programs to provide more effective support for schools, enforce federal policies more efficiently, and ensure that every child had access to a quality education, regardless of their background. In 1979, Carter signed the Department of Education Organization Act, officially creating the U.S. Department of Education as a separate cabinet-level agency. This move was aimed at improving coordination, focusing resources, and increasing the federal government's role in supporting education. The U.S. Department of Education does not create curriculum for schools. Education in the United States is primarily a responsibility of state and local governments, and decisions about curricula are made at those levels. Though it does require states to adopt certain standards, such as the Common Core State Standards, adoption is voluntary. But the creation of the U.S. Department of Education was a turning point. By centralizing education policy under one agency, Carter hoped to eliminate the inefficiencies and overlapping responsibilities that existed before. It allowed the federal government to better support students and schools, particularly in underserved areas. It also laid the foundation for key programs like federal financial aid, special education services, and civil rights protections in schools. President Carter, the 39th President of the United States, took office in 1977 with a promise to prioritize education. A former Georgia governor and advocate for public schools, Carter believed education was a cornerstone of democracy and economic opportunity.
Carter would say, "We cannot build a nation that truly fulfills its promise if we neglect the education of our young people. A Department of Education will ensure the federal government plays its rightful role in supporting this vital cause."
In 1979, Carter signed the Department of Education Organization Act, creating the U.S. Department of Education as a standalone cabinet-level agency. It officially began operations on May 4, 1980. To lead this new department, Carter selected Shirley Hufstedler, a trailblazing lawyer and judge. Hufstedler wasn't an educator by trade, but she brought a legal perspective that emphasized civil rights and equal access to education. Her appointment highlighted Carter's focus on protecting marginalized communities. During her tenure, Hufstedler concentrated on consolidating federal education programs under the new department. She worked to reduce bureaucratic overlap and advocated for stronger civil rights enforcement in schools. Her efforts laid the groundwork for programs that promote educational equity.
To quote Hufstedler, "Education is the foundation of our democracy. Every child, regardless of background, deserves access to the best opportunities we can offer."
Her leadership came at a time when education was deeply tied to broader societal challenges, such as racial inequality and economic disparities. The creation of the Department of Education wasn't without controversy. Critics argued it gave the federal government too much influence over local schools, traditionally managed at the state level. Others questioned the cost of establishing a new federal agency. These debates reflect tensions that persist today over the federal government's role in education policy. Despite this, the department has endured and evolved. The U.S. Department of Education now oversees a range of programs, including federal financial aid, special education initiatives, and civil rights enforcement. Its existence is a testament to Carter's belief in education as a national priority and Hofstadter's dedication to justice and opportunity. Their legacy reminds us that progress in education requires vision, leadership, and a commitment to equity. Though still the leader in higher education, the U.S. has fallen behind in K-12. In 2020, PISA, out of 79 countries, ranked the U.S. 39th in reading, 37th in math, and 18th in science. Without their efforts, many federal programs that support millions of students might not exist, though clearly the mission is ongoing. If you liked this video, like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.